Hello and welcome to this short movie in which I'll be introducing you to Innovasys Document X 2010, the documentation and help authoring solution for Visual Studio 2010. Before I make a start on the actual product demo, I'd like to give you a quick introduction to Innovasys. Innovasys specialises in documentation and help authoring tools, and we've been doing that since 1997, and we have a strong history of support specifically for Visual Studio, including the Help Studio Lite authoring tool that's in the Visual Studio 2005 and 2008 SDKs. And our tools are used by many of the brand name .NET component vendors, including Infogistix, Dundas, Telerik and Farpoint, to help produce their commercial product documentation. Document X has a number of different components. The first component is integrated directly with Visual Studio 2005 to 2010. It's a visual comment editor that allows you to work with XML format source comments in a WYSIWYG friendly environment. Document X also includes a standalone component to allow you to author content outside of source code, work with the documentation projects, and to build your documentation. We can make use of standard XML comments where they're produced by the .NET compilers, so that'd be C#, VB.NET and C++.NET. And we support the documentation of .NET 1 to 4 assemblies, Silverlight assemblies, database schemas, ASP.NET Ajax and COM. So I have some C# code loaded in Visual Studio 2010, and it has some existing XML format source comments. I'm going to add a couple more to the RSS feed class here. So I've got the source code file open. I've also got a documentation edit window open, and this is our visual comment editor. And what I'm seeing here is a tree on the left hand side with all of my code members within that particular code file, and on the right hand side I'm seeing a preview of the generated page, and I'm looking at the 2008 style preview, but I can also switch to 2010 style, the new Visual Studio 2010 style, and edit within that as well. So we're producing two outputs from this documentation project, and I can work within either when I'm working in the visual comment editor. So these areas surrounded with grey dotted lines with the headers on the right here are editable areas. The rest is generated automatically by Document X. So I can type summary description at the top of the page here. And what I'm also going to do is to turn this RSS item reference into a hyperlink. And when I switch back to my source code view, I can see that that's written back as an XML format source comment, including the C tag for the hyperlink. And that also holds true for the more complex content as well. So if I create a new source code example, I can see exactly what that example is going to look like whilst I'm editing, but if I switch back to the source, it's written back as an XML format source comment. So the overriding objective here is that you're working within a friendly WYSIWYG environment, but we're always writing back your content as XML format source comments. So I'm going to go ahead and build this project, and that will create the assembly and the XML comment file that Document X will consume. And I'm going to switch to Document X, and I have my documentation project loaded here, and before I go ahead and build, I'm going to go into the content file, and in a content file I can author additional content beyond what I've put in my XML source comments. Content that I defined in the XML source comments is shown whilst I'm editing as grey text, so I can see what's going to come through from the source comments and decide whether I want to override or supplement that with additional content. So I'm just going to put some additional content in the remarks section in here before we build. So let's kick off the build process. I'll skip to the end of the build. And this is the root page of our generated documentation. I'm going to drill down to that class that we added a description against. And I can see here the description I defined in my XML comment, but also the remarks I defined in the content file, along with the example, as well as the automatically generated portions like the object model and the syntax sections. So I'll switch back to Visual Studio 2010. I'm going to open up a project that consumes the RSS feed library that I've just been documenting, just to demonstrate how easy the documentation can be wired into your components. So that documentation I've just generated is registered with Visual Studio, and if I press F1 from that consumer class, it takes me straight to the documentation. So you get first class support for F1 with the documentation that you generate. So that concludes this short movie. If you'd like to learn more about Document X, you can find out more at www.innovasys.com, and you can contact me directly at richard.sloggett@innovasys.com.